All right, welcome to the conversation. A lot of people want third parties. You guys want a third party? Well, guess what? There already is a third party. It's called the Working Families Party. And we're gonna bring in Nelini Stamp. She is the Director of Strategy and Partnerships for them to help understand what is it, what does it do, and whether you should be a part of it. So Nelini, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
No problem. So let's start super basic for people who don't know. What is the Working Families Party?
Yes, the Working Families Party is a third party in the United States that is fighting for the many and not just the few. We find, recruit, and train candidates to run for office, but we like to call ourselves non-delusional, meaning that we won't just put up third party challenges when we know that we can actually primary Democrats in many places in this country. We're best known for, especially this year, primarying the mayor of Buffalo and winning in the primary with India Walton, who could be on Tuesday the first major socialist mayor of a city since the 1970s.
Yeah, so I'm actually talking to her next on this show. So, so there you go.
That's great.
Yeah. So, but sometimes you guys will support the Democrat in the race, right? So how does that work?
Yeah, so it works differently in different places. In New York, in Connecticut, in Oregon, and in South Carolina, we actually have our own ballot line. So we have historically, we'll support a Democrat in the primary, and it'll usually be a primary challenge. Sometimes we'll actually run third party, like Tish James, who is the Attorney General of the state of New York. When she first ran, she ran as a third party Working Families Party for the city council in New York City. We have other folks like Nelini in the Assembly of New York and Diana Richardson, who all ran as WFP only candidates. And we have some in other states. And those states, we actually have a ballot line. In states like here in Pennsylvania, we don't have a ballot line, but we recruit candidates to run in Democratic primaries, or when there is nonpartisan primaries, right? When you're just voting for the candidates itself, we will find and recruit them and support their candidacies, build a base around them, and make sure that we win.
Do you ever run third party candidates in general elections where it's just, well, let me just let you answer.
Yeah, we have before. So in the state of Connecticut, we ran Ed Gomes, who was a state legislator for quite some time. Like Tish James, when she ran in the general against a Democrat. It was a special, but it was still a general special. And we ran and she won on Working Families only. So we've done it a few times, but a lot of our power is actually running in Democratic primaries. So we will, especially in places where we don't have our own ballot line, because ballot status is really hard to get in this country and to maintain as well.
Right.
It's all set up to hold the two-party system.
Now I'll tell you my opinion. I think that's the right way to go. That makes sense. You fight in the primaries, and then in certain elections where you think you have an actual practical chance of winning in the general, then of course, why not, right? But unfortunately, I think both you and I would agree, very unfortunately, the third party candidate usually does not have a chance in the general election in most elections in America. Now, a lot of people on the left hate to hear that. So do you guys get flack for not running more in general elections?
Yeah, we do. But like the folks who see our actual power and our base with our candidates, with the folks who we have, they understand what we're doing. I mean, when we changed the demographics of the New York City Council. They were caucusing by borough. It was like a Staten Island caucus and a Brooklyn caucus. We changed the demographics of that by running and winning primaries and making sure that progressives have won and run. I think the other thing that people will give us flack, but I say this at the end of the day. Millions of people, working class people, know what the Democratic and Republican parties are. Millions and millions of people. Until we have that built for third parties, it is not the strategy to get a majority working class to be involved in elections.
Right, and so theoretically, if you keep building power, and I've seen the Working Families Party grow in my lifetime, and as I've covered politics, then you could push for things like ranked choice voting, and you could make a third party more and more viable as you go. So let me start by, in that line of questioning, asking how thrilled were you guys about ranked choice voting in New York?
Absolutely thrilled. I mean, obviously we weren't the happiest with how the primary ended up in terms of the mayoral race. However, we got to see champions like Sandy Nurse, who was with me at Occupy Wall Street, fighting the good fight in the streets, Tiffany Caban, Shahana Hanif win their races because of ranked choice voting. We elected Brad Lander as a comptroller and re-elected Dramani Williams. So I think it's amazing. We fundamentally believe that our democracy needs heavily reform. And unfortunately, they're not doing that in Capitol Hill right now, but we will advocate for it in every state that we see fit. So we were really excited. And it showed that working class candidates, people of color candidates, we have more women ever that are coming in a freshman class, if they win on Tuesday, which most likely they will, to represent us in the city of New York. So I'm really excited that we're seeing these structural changes happen across the country.
By the way, the website's workingfamilies.org. And so this one's a layup, but but a lot of folks don't know, that's why I'm asking it. Some old school Democrats will say, well, what do you need the Working Families Party for? We already have the Democratic Party.
Well, here's my answer to that. The Democratic Party is a machine that is made to protect incumbents. And as we know, as we're seeing in so many different places across the country, both locally and nationally, Democratic incumbents start to get to the interests of not working class people. They're either, in places like Atlanta, where we want to shut down the Atlanta Central Detention Center. You have, the pro-police unions, and you have them influencing elections in Atlanta. You have corporate real estate lobbies, fossil fuel lobbies that invest in elections and are lobbying to make sure that the incumbent protects their interests and not the interests of working people. So until we structurally change, getting money out of politics, the things that we, progressives have been championing for the last decade plus, we can't just trust the Democratic Party to just protect their interests and to protect the incumbents that are there.
Well, you just mentioned India Walton earlier in the interview, and that's a perfect example. So a Democratic Socialist supported by Working Families Party wins the Democratic primary, and all of a sudden the Democrats turn and go, we don't really care about primaries. And the thing that we told you guys not to do your whole existence, to run in the general election, the Democratic mayor does, and half the Democratic Party supports him. So, I'm now going to turn to the thing that frustrates me the most, because it's an inevitable question. So normally that guy should be ridden out of town, right? But the reason he's not, and you've got a real race on your hands in Buffalo, is because of the media. When you guys, if you ever dared running in a general election, the media would pulverize you, right? Yep. But when a corporate Democrat does it, they seem to be just fine with it. But you're in the thick of the fight. Am I seeing that wrong, or is that correct?
I mean, you're seeing it, 100% right. It's the media, and it's also, remember, like Kathy Hochul, who is the governor, still will not support Indy Walton at this point. You have the Democratic the Democratic Party chair. I mean, India will explain this, but Jay Jacobs even compared India to the KKK, and then that's what the media is covering, instead of actually that, like, it is ridiculous that Byron Brown is running in a write-in, right? If any of us did that, they would call us spoilers and saying that we're gonna split the vote and let a Republican win. But that's not what we're seeing here. And it's not just the media, it's the media hand in hand with the Democratic establishment. And we cannot forget big real estate's role. India is a fighter for housing justice and has been a fighter for housing rights, especially now with evictions happening so many times across our country, especially during the pandemic. Real estate has thrown in a lot of money because they want to see their interests protected, and they don't want to see somebody being a champion for working people and a champion for housing rights in the mayoral seat.
Yeah, look, I've said this a million times on the show, so it's not anything new. The Democratic Party is corrupt. So when you talk about big real estate, they corporate donations from those real estate companies. And so that's why they serve them. They don't serve their voters. So that whole like progressive shtick they have is a cover story to get your votes to then hand you back over to the real estate companies, just like the Republicans do. And Andrew Cuomo was the king of that, right? So, but I think we just came up with a new word here, big media. It popped into my head as you were talking, because we call them mainstream media, corporate media, establishment media, but really that's what they are. They're big media, and they're an industry and a lobby of their own. And so of course big media is gonna agree with corporations that run us and the Democratic Party. And the fact that they won't acknowledge that they're biased is just maddening and hilarious at the same time. Anyways, but I did want to ask you guys about something. So I'm co-founder of Just Democrats, and I think the most important rule we had was no corporate PAC money. You're not allowed to take it. Do you guys have a similar rule?
Yeah, we don't take corporate PAC money at all, and we have worked with mostly folks who don't take corporate PAC money. There has been folks that we've had to actually coach out. We believe in folks transforming. So folks who maybe previously taken corporate PAC money, we have worked with them to be like, this is it, and they have pulled that out. There's been cases where our candidates have actually given back the money because they realized that that they can't have corporate PAC money.
Yeah, it's corrupting, period. Yep.
Yeah, and we don't need no puppeteers here, okay?
Yeah, 100%. All right, Nelini Stamp, Director of Strategy and Partnerships. Everybody go check out workingfamilies.org. Thank you so much for joining us, appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.